What is Easter to you? Open the door. Open the door and take a look at it. That's the invitation this Sunday. Not to take a look at Easter from the eyes of anyone else, not even from the eyes of the books, not even from the eyes that we have had passed down to us for ages, but what is Easter through your eyes? Are you ready to create an experience, a personal experience of Easter that transcends any boundaries, that completely throws open the door of your heart so that it is an experience of transformation? When we ask ourselves, what is Easter, there's so much that can come to mind, is there not? Some people can even take the idea of Easter and enter into a debate, right? Enter into a what happened, when happened, my philosophy, my religion, your religion. But the true practice of Easter is not about debates. It's not about even limited concepts or ideas that may be passed down to us, and it's not about anyone else's idea of it. It's about an experience of the rising, an experience of the rising within. So we know that we get this sacred holiday, this tradition, because there was a man that walked the earth. That was an extraordinary man, a man that showed humanity there was a new option, a different option, a great opportunity, that in fact there was a different mind to live from than the human mind. That there was a door, that in fact this mind was the door. And that when we walk through that door, we have an awakening in consciousness. So this Easter celebration is about that man. But what did that man say? Where did that man point when he talked about the true teachings and the true experience that he was expressing, demonstrating, embodying? He pointed to you. He pointed to us. He pointed to the consciousness that binds us, and he pointed to an idea that I and my source are one. That I and my source are one. And he created a new conversation, a dynamic conversation, a disturbing and a disruptive conversation, no? And people tried to keep pulling him back into the conversation they wanted him to have. But he had clarity. He had a personal relationship with his I am nature, with the fullness of his divine self. And that conversation led and drove all of his activity. That conversation, which was a conversation beyond human limits, beyond the confinement of the human condition, and even beyond the time and space in which he lived and had his physical being, that conversation was so dynamic and so profound that we're still having it today. What else is Easter? I am proud that we in Unity stand on a tradition that has expanded and included, that is not stuck inside of a box, but that has opened the door to greater consciousness, to a mystical approach to the celebration of the rising of consciousness. I think it's fabulous that we know that some of the history of Easter had a role in a weaving together of the pagan traditions of celebrating fertility, celebrating the goddess, celebrating the return of the sun, celebrating multiplication. I think it's gorgeous that we have symbology of eggs and a rabbit. That we have a practice where there's totem animals. I mean, have you sat there and thought to yourself, what in the world do eggs and Jesus and rabbits all have to do with each other? We go along acting like it's kind of normal, doing it. Well, there's a lot of history there. And in Unity, the great thing is that we can look at the history. We can look at the history, and rather than calling it all chaos and calling it all crazy, we can look at the spiritual principle behind it. We can look at the mysticism behind it. It's beautiful that there was an environment of inclusiveness that said, okay, I honor your history. I honor where you come from. Are you hearing the Unity practice? I honor where you've been. Let me include and transcend. Let us include, honor your experience of the divine, your experience of your birthright, your experience of your soul, and let us rise to an even newer expression. Let us dance that into motion together. In Unity, we also have this beautiful practice of knowing that the conversation on Jesus isn't a conversation that happened 2,000 years ago, and nor would he want it to be. Nor would he want it to be. I've thought, and this is going to probably leave us all with more food for thought than we might want on an Easter Sunday, but I've thought about this idea that he said, I have come to be the light, right? Be the light. And he said, even these things that I do, more you shall do. More you shall do. Well, I've thought to myself, and I'm not solving this for us because it's sitting in the ruminations of my mind, but I've thought to myself, very interesting, because we say that, but what more shall we do? Because he was talking to the people of the time, right? He wasn't directly talking to us. I mean, we take it as he was talking to us, because metaphysically, mystically, he's talking to us because we're still having the conversation, which is quite interesting. But if you think about it, he was saying that to the people of the time, right here in front of him. Even more shall you do. Well, those people are all gone, and do we hear legends about them? Did they do more? I mean, we know what he did, but what about the them that he was talking about? Did they do it? He told them they would do it. Even more you shall do. And they're all in history now. Some of them we've heard about, some of them we haven't. So what might he be talking about? Is it possible that the you he's talking about is the collective consciousness, the vibrational field of the Christ embodied in all beings, the highest mind available to each of us? And he's not talking about you as a separate sense being, you as a separate self, you as an individual, but you as the Christ, and saying that the Christ, the consciousness, will do greater things. If we allow it, if we expand, if we open to it, if we allow its presence to be the mind in which we think. Not the limited ego self that gets caught up in fear, gets caught up in the temporal, gets caught up in constrictions, gets caught up in limitation, gets caught up in seeming separation, mine and yours, gets caught up in control and dominion, my religion, not your religion. But that this consciousness of the Christ shall do greater things. This consciousness of the awakening, the consciousness of the rising, will do greater things. We know in Unity that when Jesus said, I am the way and the truth and the light, only through me, he was talking about his I am nature, just like he was talking about the you will do more. Not that I will have a bigger job, a better job, not that I will have more or less in my bank account, not that I will control this country or that country, not that I will start this war or stop this war. All of those things have been going on throughout time, right? All of those things have been going on throughout time, changing the world, manipulating the world for it to meet my needs. This was a demonstrator that showed, get your head out of that. Get your head out of that and get your heart open. Get your mind open, because it all exists right here and it all comes from right here. Those are just expressions. You will waste your time if you try to keep working on it out there. Work on it in here. The I am nature he was talking about is right in the soul. It's the pureness of being. And when he said you, he's talking about your I am nature. And he said that I am is the way and the truth and the light. And only through it, only through gnosis, only through knowledge, only through the development and the use of the higher mind will one reach their potential. Will one actualize what they are here to experience, to fulfill, and to express. What a fabulous teaching. What a fabulous teaching. And are we not proud? Is it not a beautiful and a great thing that we stand on a tradition that loves, forgives, includes, that teaches the spirit of the law rather than the letter of the law, that breaks traditions and breaks paradigms, that breaks down any limits in consciousness and continually says more, open, higher? That even that which you can conceive and perceive, there is an even greater way. There is an even greater idea. There is an even more profound. What does that say? That talks about Charles Fillmore and the law of infinite expansion. Even more shall you do is the law of infinite expansion in motion. It's that no matter what is going on, there is more unfoldment. There is more awakening. There is more consciousness. There is more awareness, because there is, in fact, an idea of humanity that was born in divine mind, the one mind, the mind of God, the mind of all that is source. Whatever whatever we want to call it or not call it, it is born in this mind, and it was offered to humanity, and it is available to each of us. Even this practice of Easter, even this teaching of Jesus as being the resurrected one, the one that saves, or in another translation, the one that gives life, the one whose path awakens the life, sure, that saves. You betcha that saves. But it doesn't save because you're the smut of the earth. It doesn't save because you're a sinner. It doesn't save because you really are separate. It saves because it shows us our unity. It saves because it shows us our potential. It saves because it shows us that the suffering and the separation in the world need not be. That in fact there is a greater way, a greater experience. And I love it that this tradition of Easter, that this tradition of Jesus, the Christ presence, the cosmic Christ, is not limited to Christianity. It is in Buddhism. It is in the Bodhisattva. Is the idea that a being would come back with the compassionate heart to awaken oneself on behalf of all beings. To awaken oneself on behalf of all beings. That is the risen Christ. The awakening on behalf of all beings. So we stand on this magnificent tradition that loves. Sure, it has been used for hatred as anything can be, right? It has been used for judgment. It has been used for separation. But I believe Jesus, the master teacher, the way shower, the cosmic Christ presence, developed a Christ mind, developed his fullness of consciousness, and he became an initiate. He initiated healing. By the power of his practice, by the power of his mind, like a tuning fork, he awakened in people a conversation that was beyond the context of the time. He had a conversation that could last 2,000 years. We're still having that conversation today. He was having a prolific, profound, and prophetic conversation about the cosmos that was beyond the conceptual capacity of the people of the time. A conversation about the cosmos that was beyond the conceptual capacity of the people of the time. And guess what? I think it's still beyond our conceptual capacity. And here's the good news about it. The good news is that that's a good thing. Because if it was in the realm of our conceptual capacity, we'd stay arguing about it forever, wouldn't we? You know how stories, like in history, stories now, you better get it right, right? You better get your facts right. Or what does everyone do? They set off an alarm. They set off an alarm and they attack, right? They stop listening. Your story's not right. I can't hear you. But stories in history have not always been told like that. Stories throughout history were told to evoke an experience. They were told to transfer an understanding that went beyond time and space, that went beyond your language, went beyond your culture, went beyond your ideas, went beyond your constructs, went beyond your mind. And it didn't matter if all the details were exactly true. It didn't matter how long the cross was or how high the side beams were. It mattered that the concept is a crossing out of error thinking, a crossing out of limitation, a crossing out and a letting go of that which does not serve the greater awakening of all humanity. Marianne Williamson says that we have two choices. We have two choices as the you that will do greater things, which is the us, which is the Christ mind, which is the vibrational field of awakening. We have two choices. It's either enlightenment or destruction. It's either that we will be our own demise or we will be our own resurrection. And we can see that playing out in so many ways, can't we? We can see it playing out on our globe and our planet, in our cosmos, and we can see it playing out in our own beings. But only when we get the experience the experience of the light, the experience of illumination, calling it forth, accepting it, breathing it into being, will we get over that battle? Will that battle be over that tethers the mind into the sentient experience? Will we get over that battle and get into the experience, the full experience? Charles Fillmore in 1914 says this about the Easter story. He says, the life and death and resurrection of Jesus Christ is viewed and taught from two diametrically opposite standpoints. The first teaching, and the most popular, is that of the Orthodox Christian Church, that Jesus was the Son of God, that he was crucified, died, and resurrected, ascended into heaven, and sits at the right hand of the Father as the one who judges men, and that his death was to save our souls. The other teaching is that of the unorthodox Christians, the mystics, those who look and see from a standpoint of logic and truth. They teach that Jesus was crucified, that he died, that the life was put out of his body. But he had developed that power which resides in every man until he resurrected that body, and that he refined that body until it was invisible to the eye of the sense, but that it resides here in our midst, that it is the seed of a new life for all of those who believe in it, that it is for all who enter it with faith. It is here, all who enter it with faith, striving to make their consciousness its consciousness. Now, he says, the two great viewpoints of these teachings, succinctly stated, is this. One teaches men how to die. The other teaches men how to live. One teaches men how to die, and the other teaches men how to live. You can't be alive today and not realize that being crucified is a part of the human condition and what humans are capable of. It's ordinary. It's happening all the time, isn't it? Mind, body, and spirit. It's happening with religious abuse in the spiritual realm. It's happening with mental and emotional abuse in the social and in the individual realm. And in the body realm, it's happening as separation, as limitation, as toxicity. It's happening in our global wars, and it was happening 2,000 years ago. And even with that, the master teacher taught that ascension is in your mind. That ascension is in the mind. That there is an ascended mind available to each of us. Charles Fillmore went on to say that Jesus came to save us from the limitations of our own minds. Everything is in the mind. Everything comes out of the mind. And when you find the power resident in your mind, then you have begun the solution of life. Then you will arrive, if you follow your own mind to its ultimate, raise it to the Jesus Christ degree, you will find the solution of every problem that presents itself to you. And above all, you will find yourself. Above all, you will find yourself. Sig Paulson says this, you are a vital part of an evolutionary program that has never stopped, and your future role in this program is up to you. You must ultimately come to the point in your own individual unfoldment where you are willing to go beyond the book, beyond the institution, beyond the human opinion, into a direct experience of the light. He says, all enlightened souls of eternity will walk with you when you begin your inner journey. Happy Resurrection Sunday. Namaste.